Oh, 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 there we go. Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I'm super excited because we get to do one of my favorite things of all time, and that is talk about movies. Duh. So I decided that it would be really fun to kind of do this little annual series. Hopefully I can keep up with it and do it every single year. And that is basically going over my movies wrapped. So the concept of this is me talking about all of the movies that I have watched in this year. So this is my 2024 movies wrapped, where I'll be going over essentially every single movie I watched this year for the first time. So whether that's a theatrical release or just me finally getting around to watching an acclaimed classic or just sitting down watching a silly movie that I've never seen before. So that is what this is going to be a recap of. I've taken all the movies that I've watched for the very first time this year and I have organized them into a list, counting down from my least favorites to my most favorites. So we'll kind of get my top 5 movies of the year sort of situation, which will be really fun. You might have seen some of these, maybe you haven't, but hopefully you'll get some kind of insight on maybe what your next watch should be. So I've taken account of all of this through letterboxd. Not sponsored, but I would love to be sponsored. I use letterboxd a lot if you guys aren't really familiar with it. It's basically just an app to track your movie/TV show watching, which is really, really helpful, and you can read reviews and find like actors and all sorts of things on it. And so I use it literally all the time. Anytime I watch a movie, I'm constantly on letterboxd like after the movie ends. So that's how I was able to come up with this awesome list for you guys. And according to letterboxd, I have watched 82 movies this year. That includes rewatches. So out of the 82 movies that I've watched, 39 of them were movies that I have never seen before. We have 39 movies that I have never seen that I watched this year, and that is what we are going to be counting down. I literally have all of them written down on my iPad, so I'm ready to go through them and just chat about it all. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. Yay! This is completely biased. These are completely biased opinions based on my personal favorite films and movies that I enjoy a lot. And so it might not necessarily be what you agree with, but I mean, hey, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. This is just mine. All right, so starting at the bottom and we work our way up, and I'm gonna try to be a little bit quick with these so that we're not sitting here for hours and hours talking about the movies. But starting with number 39, the worst movie that I think I watched for the first time this year is That's My Boy. And this movie is a comedy movie by Adam Sandler, starring him alongside Andy Samberg, which Andy Samberg is actually the only reason I enjoyed this movie because I'm a pretty big Andy Samberg fan. But overall, this movie was just a classic Adam Sandler film, and unfortunately, I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of Adam Sandler movies, except for maybe Bedtime Stories, because that one, I mean, is cinematic. It's the best ever. But besides that, I'm just not a huge Adam Sandler film fan, so it's pretty understandable that this one made it at the bottom of the list. It's just the humor is not for me particularly. It's probably funny to a lot of other people, but for me, I just didn't really enjoy it. Moving on to number 38, we have Tropic Thunder. Now, this movie is a Ben Stiller film, which I kind of include him on the exact same level that Adam Sandler is on. And so, again, not really my personal style. I mean, it has a lot of really notable names in this film for some reason, which is kind of crazy, but at the end of the day, it was a little difficult to understand what was going on. And honestly, the only thing that really kept me going through it was the fact that they were like on a movie set, so it was like filming a movie within a movie, and I think that concept is always really cool to dive into, but I don't know. Again, not my kind of movie, so that's why it's gonna be at the bottom of the list. Moving on to number 37, The Vow. This is a movie starring Channing Tatum and Rachel McAdams, and this is the kind of like amnesia trope where like she gets into a really big accident, kind of like forgets everything about her life, and like she forgets everything about like, I don't know, I can't remember if they were married in the movie, something like that, I don't know. But it's basically just like about Channing Tatum's character being really persistent about the fact that he is like her boyfriend slash her husband. I think they're married. I think that they're married. But obviously she's like completely forgotten about it, and like it's just like a whole plot that way. And personally, I feel like a lot of those plots like fall really flat if you're not like really getting anything. And personally, in this movie, Rachel McAdams' character was like just really difficult to work with, and she was just really like against the whole idea of him being her husband, which I thought was kind of like the wrong direction to go when you're trying to like write kind of like a rom-com. It's like, okay, you want these people to fall in love, so why is she being so like resistant to it? And it doesn't like really even end with them together at all. So it's like, I forgot to say at the beginning of this video, spoiler warning ahead for any of these movies that I'm talking about. So if you haven't seen them and you want to watch it, make sure to skip past my review for them. But yeah, to number 36, we have The First Purge. And I have never seen any of the Purge movies until this year. Basically, this is a story of how they came up with the concept for the Purge. So it's like the very beginning, and it's kind of like the trial area, and it's set in like in Long Island, New York. And so it's kind of interesting for sure. Again, I just was like not really connected to any of these characters. I think that the execution could have been way better with this concept, and they just didn't really run with it at all, which is like interesting. Yeah, I mean, some of the action sequences were good, but overall I just found it like really lackluster. Again, I wasn't connected to any of the characters. I really could care less what happened to them. It was just very flat, very surface level, and so it wasn't really something that I enjoyed all too much. On to number 35, we have Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1. This year and last year, I decided to slowly start making my way through the Twilight films. My roommates last year, we all decided to watch them, and I actually didn't finish them. I didn't watch Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2, so I have not seen the conclusion to Bella and Edward and Jacob's story. But I have seen up to Breaking Dawn Part 1, and guys, I don't know what it is. I just can't get behind the Twilight films, or at least most of them. I just really can't get behind. Just the concept. I just think maybe I missed the mark on Twilight. Like maybe back in the day, if I had read it or was interested in it when it had originally come out, when I was, you know, super young and a baby, then maybe I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But I just feel like now, after reading all the books I have and seeing all the movies I have, the love triangle concept with the werewolves and the vampires is just like sometimes a little bit hard to take seriously, especially because this movie has been memed so many times and just is like constantly being made fun of by the general public, that it is a little bit difficult when I hadn't seen the movies before all that happened to kind of really take it seriously. But this movie was just not fantastic. I think I gave it 2.5 stars, maybe just 2 stars, maybe 1.5 stars. I don't know. It's on my letterboxd somewhere. And I believe my review was just like, good God, or like something like that. This one in particular was just really strange, and I just didn't thoroughly enjoy it at all. So moving right along to number 34, we have Why Him. Now, this movie was actually really funny, and I actually did enjoy it, which is a little bit outside of my like normal range, but I actually thought it was good. It stars Dave Franco and Zoe Dutch. I don't really know how to say her name. But both of them are in it, and they do a great job. And it's just kind of like a classic comedy story of like the main daughter girl starts dating this guy that the dad and like the rest of the family doesn't really approve of, and so she kind of like takes her family to his place to like try to convince the family that he's like a good person. And so it's kind of like an in-laws situation where it's like him trying to convince the parents that like he's really truly in love with the daughter, but it's done obviously in like a comedic way, things like that. It's pretty funny. Keegan-Michael Key is in this movie. Adam Devine makes a couple appearances in this movie too, so like there's a pretty good cast stacked up for this film, and I actually enjoyed it. Moving on to number 33, we have Despicable Me 4, and this is actually the first release on this list that actually came out in 2024. And I saw this with my summer job daycare kids this past summer, and I mean, it's a Despicable Me movie. I can't believe that there are 4 of these films, honestly. Like, half of the kids that I went to go see this movie with weren't even alive when the first Despicable Me came out. The ending montage where they all sing Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears is probably the only thing that kept this movie from, you know, not being at the very bottom of this list. Moving on to number 32, we have The Purge. Now this is the first, the first Purge was the movie I talked about earlier, but this movie was the first one made, and this is just the original The Purge. And obviously the concept of The Purge is like really cool and interesting, and I think that they did a decently good job with this one, but again, I feel like they could have made it a little bit more exciting. Like, I like the idea of them like kind of being like the rich people, like being safe and then like it not happening, but I wish that they had left the house at some point. I don't know, I just feel like I needed like a little bit more. Having the entire movie set in the same place is obviously like a little constricting, and so it's hard to like really have a story with that. And also the little boy, the kid, the son in this movie was the most annoying character ever. Like, sorry, not sorry. He was just the worst and also caused all of the problems in this film. So I was just like, we just need to like take him out. Like, we gotta go. But the mom was a boss, especially in the end scene when she like smashes the other lady's head into the table and like breaks her nose. That was fire. That was a fire moment. On to number 31. This is one that I watched pretty recently, and this is The Outlaws, and I watched this on Netflix. It came out in 2023, starring Adam Devine as the main character, and also Nina Dobrev is in this, which is really funny because I haven't seen her in a lot of stuff since Vampire Diaries. But they both star in this, and it's basically about them. They have a really like healthy relationship in this movie, which I think is awesome. And they are getting married and all this stuff, and then her parents like come back to visit. He's like the owner of a bank or something, and basically her parents end up robbing his bank, and he's like convinced that they're criminals, and she like doesn't really believe them or anything like that, and it's a whole little plot. And then he basically like gets closer with the in-law parents. And moving on to 30, we're through the bottom 9, I guess, bottom 10. 30, I have Disney's Descendants Rise of Red. So this is the 4th installment in the Descendants universe by Disney Channel, and this movie came out in 2024, so it's my second 2024 release, and me and my friends watched this past summer. And as someone who like grew up in like prime time for the original Descendants trilogy to come out, this was just a little bit of a train wreck. I wrote an entire review on Letterboxd about how they should have done this movie and what it should have looked like, and there were just so many plot holes. And I understand that we're probably gonna get a sequel or two from this like new branch of the franchise. I understand Disney kind of wanting to revive the franchise, but I also understand like a lot of the original cast not wanting to come back just to honor Cameron Boyce, which makes 110%. So there's just a lot of things that kind of surrounded this movie. I overall don't think it was fantastic. I think a lot of the music was pretty rough. Obviously Kenny Ortega didn't come back to like work on this film at all. He didn't direct it or anything like that, and it kind of clearly shows, unfortunately. Like, I mean, there's just, Kenny Ortega is just the mastermind behind the Descendants franchise, and so to decide to do this project without having him on board is like Moana 2 going out deciding to create songs without having Lin-Manuel Miranda. For me personally, it gets to be number 30. Okay, moving right along to number 29, we have Arthur the King, which I saw this movie in theaters back in January, February, I believe, when it came out. And this is just like a Mark Wahlberg based on a true story about, you know, them doing kind of like the Amazing Race, and then finding this dog that like helps them win the race, which is so sweet and so fun. And I actually really liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Moving on to number 28. Definitely Maybe. Sorry. Definitely Maybe, number 28. This is a Ryan Reynolds movie, kind of like a little rom-com moment about him telling his daughter the story of how he met his mom, but the way that met her mom, but kind of the way that he tells it, he involves like 3 different ladies, and then, you know, the little girl has to figure out who her mom ended up actually being. But I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. It was definitely interesting to kind of watch. I don't know if I particularly liked Ryan Reynolds' character in this movie. I think this year especially, I kind of came to the conclusion that Ryan Reynolds plays like a very specific character in almost every movie that he's in, and sometimes that character, if done incorrectly, can be really unlikable. And so when I think in a rom-com too, it's kind of like harder. I don't know. This is not to like insult Ryan Reynolds fans at all, but I just don't really think it worked for me in this film. Moving on to number 27, we have Mean Girls, and this is the Mean Girls Broadway adaptation that like took the world by storm in early January this past year. I have never seen the full Broadway musical of Mean Girls, but I've seen a couple clips of it and I know the soundtrack pretty well. And honestly, I don't think this movie was that bad. But there were definitely things that I hated about it. Believe it or not though, I preferred, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name right now. Conrad Fisher. I know that's not his name, but I'm forgetting the actor's name right now. Chris, it says Chris Brainy? I don't know if that's right. I actually liked him as Aaron Samuels, in this movie. I think that he kind of captured it a lot better. I was literally watching the movie and I was like, why do I like him better as Aaron Samuels than I do as Conrad Fisher? Because I'm gonna cause some controversy here, but I'm a Jeremiah fan, so I just gotta throw that out there. And you know, it wasn't bad, it wasn't horrible. I'm glad that they like brought Renee Rapp in. It also kind of like launched a lot of her career as well, being in this movie and then connecting her back to the Broadway musical, and she actually played Regina George on stage back in like 2019, which I thought was fun. I am sad they cut a lot of the music. I definitely think that most of the songs are better in the Broadway musical, except for, I really liked Cautionary Tale, which is the opening song, because they have Ali'i Carvalho in this, which is awesome. And then I also really liked Apex Predator. I liked the movie Apex Predator version better than the Broadway version. Number 26, we have Passengers, and this movie is Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. It came out in, I believe, 2015 or 2016. I want to say 2016. But this is basically kind of like a little like space dystopian where they are sending all these people to start a new life on a new planet. I just dropped my iPad pencil. Let me get that real quick. Chris Pratt's like little coma sleep preservation pod is accidentally opened because the ship gets like hit by something in space, and it accidentally sets off his thing where, you know, he's open and now living his life, but they're not going to reach the new planet for like, I don't know, like hundreds of years. So he's, you know, not going to make it. And basically we kind of follow him, and then he makes the really rash decision to open the pod of the girl he thinks is cute, which is Jennifer Lawrence, but he doesn't tell her that she opened the pod. He kind of plays it off like it was both an accident so that he just has someone to live for, which I totally get. So it's a little bit of like a moral compass movie as well, and you kind of see them grow and like what that situation kind of looks like. So it's definitely an interesting watch. Actually, I think I liked it a little bit more than I thought I was going to. I low-key was tearing up in this film, so I don't know. I think they did a good job with it though. Moving on to number 25, we have Sidelined, The QB and Me, aka the Noah Beck film that just came out like a month ago, I want to say, probably less, on Tubi. I can't believe that this movie made it this high up on the list, I'm gonna be honest. Now, I went in with probably the lowest expectations ever, considering this is Noah Beck, 2020 TikTok star Noah Beck, 2020 I dated Dixie D'Amelio Noah Beck. But here we are. I mean, here we are. And obviously this movie is based off of a Wattpad book, so again, I went in with the vibes of this is gonna be exactly like After, but it actually wasn't. It was a pleasant surprise. Now, did I think the writing was bad? Yes, absolutely. I think the writing was horrible. Do I think the acting was bad? Not necessarily. I actually think that the acting in this movie was pretty good. I just wish that they were given a little bit of a better script. I think the storyline was on the right page too, and I kind of liked the concept of it being like he fell first, like she fell harder kind of situation where like Noah Beck was clearly in love with her from the beginning. Not bad, honestly, and I would actually like to see Noah Beck in more rom-coms because he's definitely, I mean, a lot of people have been saying this since the movie came out, but he's definitely giving Noah Centineo To All the Boys vibes. And honestly, I love that for him. Like, he's the one out of any of those TikTok stars that I could see making it in the real world and like acting in Hollywood. It probably would be Noah Beck. So that's all I have to say on that movie. Moving on to number 24. And at number 24 we have Scream 4. This year I decided that I was going to tackle a big chunk of the Scream franchise movies because I've only ever seen the first one and I love the first one so much. It's such a great movie. It's probably my favorite like Halloween thriller film. I've now seen Scream 1 through 4. But 4 was unfortunately my least favorite of the ones that I watched. And honestly, it wasn't because the movie was bad. I definitely think all of these movies are good and they're interesting and they're really great, and I just love to see the way they go about it. I think Emma Roberts was pretty good in this film. I just think that the plot overall was the most lackluster compared to the other movies. I just feel like it was kind of a little bit of a boring plot line, and like, no offense, but trying to make like, it starts to get repetitive once you kind of get to the fourth film specifically, and then it's like, okay, now we're just like grasping at strings here to continue to make these like about Sydney, even though it like really doesn't have to be about Sydney anymore. So that's just kind of where I felt like this one fell flat. Like, it was just not as great as the other ones that I had watched up to this point. Moving on to number 23, we have Pitch Perfect 2. This is the first time I've ever watched Pitch Perfect 2 because I've heard not great things about them, so I've tried to avoid them with all my heart. Unfortunately, I was finally forced to sit down and watch Pitch Perfect 2 this year, and it wasn't horrible, and it is nowhere near as good as the first one, of course, but I mean, it had some of its moments. The music, again, great, always fabulous. Haley Steinfeld, I mean, we all know that she's the problem in this movie. I mean, her character is the problem in this movie, you know, not like arguably Haley Steinfeld. I love her as Kate Bishop in Hawkeye, but in this movie, I mean, everyone knows her, and her little original song just kind of continuously screw the pooch a little bit in this movie. I do love seeing Becca and Jesse though together in this, and I do kind of love the fact that they made Benji like Haley's like love interest. I thought that was like kind of cute to like watch that happen. I'm glad that they brought Bumper back, even though he had like technically like graduated / left. Like, I think that's really fun. I just like a lot of like the humor in these movies are like just stuff that I think is really funny and is great, and the cast is fantastic for these films, so it is really hard to go wrong. It is an enjoyable movie. I would definitely probably choose to watch the first one again over watching the second one, but if this is on, like, I won't change the channel because it's a pretty good movie. Moving on to number 22, Ocean's 11. This is the first time I had seen Ocean's 11, the original, starring, I mean, the whole crew. Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, George Clooney, like, you got them all. And I have seen Ocean's 8, the 2018 film, so many times. And so actually going back and watching the original, I was able to make like so many more connections, which is really cool actually in Ocean's 8, how they brought so many of the people back from original Ocean's 11, which is something that I didn't understand until I went back and watched it, which is awesome. I love a good heist movie, a good heist film. Julia Roberts is in this as well as like George Clooney's like love interest, and so I think like ex-wife or ex-girlfriend, something like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it was actually really good. All right, moving on to number 21, we have another Brad Pitt film. It's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I watched this on Netflix, and honestly, I had a little bit of higher expectations. That's why it's only at number 21, because I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more of a romance than it was. It just seemed like there were like a couple different ways to go about their like secret spy lives, than like immediately trying to like take out the other person, like immediately trying to like kill each other. Like the whole car chase scene back to the house and everything is just like all over the place, like them fighting. I mean, again, the action sequences are really good, but I just wanted a little bit more convincing that they were like still in love. I feel like that was more of like an afterthought, which again is fine. I know it's technically a little action movie, but I think that they could have made it more interesting and exciting than they did. Number 20, Twilight Eclipse. I know, who's surprised to see a Twilight movie this high at number 20? I know I am. This is actually the one that I actually enjoyed though. This one was actually pretty good. My review on letterboxd for this one is Marry Me Instead, Jacob, which I think is so true because Jacob gets like his big glow up, and this is just kind of the one that I actually enjoyed the most. Like, I think the story actually was pretty cohesive in this one. Twilight Eclipse, you got a little bit higher of a score than Breaking Dawn Part 1. Good for you! So hopefully that will satisfy the Twilight fans for now. Moving on to number 19, we have Spirited. And Spirited, this is a Apple TV original movie by Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. It is a Christmas musical film. I think this is some sort of passion project that they did together. There's an elf reference in this movie, and I think that that carried it. Honestly, the music is not bad. I had a little bit of trouble sympathizing with Ryan Reynolds' character because we kind of run into the same thing again where he plays this typecast that is like handsome jerk, and unfortunately in this movie I really wanted to like slap Ryan Reynolds across the face like multiple times, which I understand is the purpose of the film, but like I just really wanted to like give it to him. But I actually really liked the ending of this movie. I think the ending was really great. I definitely think that, I mean, it's like a Christmas Carol story. He's a Scrooge, whatever. There's a little bit of like a paranormal twist to it, and it's also a musical, so they kind of just threw everything in there, so there's kind of a lot going on, which I think makes it a little overwhelming sometimes. But I like the concept, and I like that they kind of ran with it, and the music is good. The musical numbers are great. They're choreographed great too. Visually it's pretty fun, so yeah, there's a lot of pros to it. It's not a Christmas classic for me, at least not yet, but it's definitely one that I would probably say is worth checking out. If you are a fan of musicals and you like Christmas, then I would check out this Ryan Reynolds Will Ferrell musical. And again, they're no like Broadway singers, but I think they are good enough for this to pass. Alrighty, now we're moving on to number 18, and I have The Other Zoe. And this movie is a Amazon Prime original starring, I can't remember her name, but the girl who plays Tessa in the After series, Archie Reno, who plays Mal Oretsev in the Shadow and Bone TV show on Netflix, and Drew Starkey, who, as we all know, plays Rafe Cameron in Outer Banks. And that is the sole reason why I actually watched this movie, was to see Drew Starkey in a rom-com. And guys, oh, it paid off! I unironically loved this movie. I do think some of the concepts are very like 21st century, like her whole like app design plotline that she kind of has going on, and her like dating theory things I think are very 21st century style, but the bare bones of it, like rom-com vibes, it gives While You Were Sleeping, with Sandra Bullock vibes. Like, she accidentally gives him amnesia, she ends up falling in love with the cousin, which is Archie Reno. He ends up being kind of like a jerk and like a little weird, and so then she's like, you know what, just kidding, I actually am in love with Drew Starkey, which just says every girl ever. And so yeah, it's actually really enjoyable. I love watching Drew Starkey in like little rom-com films, and I need him to do more of these. Moving on to number 17, we have Woman of the Hour, which was actually produced and starred in by Anna Kendrick, which it was really good. It was based on the actual true murders that occurred, and it was done in such like a fun way where we kind of like went back in time and then back to Anna Kendrick's story about this murderer who was literally like kidnapping and raping and, you know, killing girls and doing all of these things and then taking pictures of them, like photography. It was just so insane to watch. And then he like ended up on a dating show, and it was all this stuff based on true story. And it was kind of crazy, and I liked the way that they kind of told this story, because like, yes, it was a movie, but also like a documentary type thing, because they're kind of reenacting the true story of the murders. But I think it was really good. The parking lot scene is so awesome in this film. It like perfectly encapsulates like the feeling of like being alone, especially like as a woman, like being alone with a man in a scary situation. Like, you know, you never know. And so I think this did a great job, and I would definitely recommend anyone to watch it because it is crazy but it's very well done, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, moving on to number 16, we have The Adam Project. I watched The Adam Project this past January, obviously, after watching Walker Scobell kind of, you know, kill it in the Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus. I decided to go back and watch his kind of first ever film, which he starred alongside Ryan Reynolds, playing a younger version of Ryan Reynolds, and then also with, I mean, Jennifer Garner's in this film, Zoe Saldana's in this film, Mark Ruffalo's in this film, which I loved the callback that they had Mark Ruffalo and Jennifer Garner play his parents again, because, you know, 13 going on 30, they played the love interest, so I kind of like use this as like an unofficial like 13 going on 30 sequel, which is interesting because there's like a paranormal aspect to it, but I mean, like, hey, just roll with it, okay? This is like, it was fan service. That was fan service. Tell me why this movie made me cry like 3 times. Like, it literally made me cry like 3 times. I don't really know why, but at number 15, I have It Ends With Us, and I saw this movie in theaters, and I actually just rewatched it a couple days ago, and I've also read the book. It's based on the book by Colleen Hoover. I mean, everyone and their mother probably knows about this book and this movie already. Stars Blake Lively, and the one guy from Jane the Virgin. So, there you go. We follow Lily, who's the main character, who experiences a, you know, abusive relationship, and realistically, a lot of the times when you're in abusive relationships, you don't realize they're abusive until afterwards. And so I like that we get like flashback scenes in this movie, like after everything happens, when she like realizes that she like needs to leave the situation, and we kind of see what actually happened instead of like this like rose-colored glass version that they give us the first time the scenes happen. So it's a very real movie, and I actually think they did a pretty good job, and they kept it very close, I think, to the book too, and we're also able to get rid of the horrendous Ellen DeGeneres references from the original book, and really tone that down in the movie version. There's a couple callbacks to it, but nothing like what you get in the book. And then at 14, I have Inside Out 2, which is another theatrical release, and I actually saw this movie in theaters 3 times. Don't ask me how it happened, but I watched it literally 3 times in a row in the theater. So Inside Out 2 made a lot of money off of me going to see this movie. But again, this was a movie I had pretty low expectations to. I didn't really expect it to outdo the first one, and I still am not quite sure if it did, but it was definitely a win. It was definitely a home run in the ballpark for Pixar. I think this one kind of revived it a little bit. Was it a little bit of a cheating their way out of it because it's a sequel to a very popular movie they've already done? Yes, a little bit, but in the world where a lot of the sequels have been falling flat lately, I'm glad that this one didn't. I'm glad that this one was better. I do unfortunately think that this means we'll get an Inside Out 3 at some point, and I'm not quite sure how that's gonna go, but I liked Inside Out 2 for what it was, and I think Maya Hawke did a fantastic job as a voice actor for this. I was actually really surprised by like her talent, and so I would love to see her voice act in more films because she has such a distinct and unique voice, and she sounded great. I mean, she sounded fantastic. So moving right along, at number 13 we have Scream 3. This is the 3rd Scream movie, and I actually really liked this one. This is the one where they kind of go to the set of Stab 3, which is like the in-universe movie genre that's based off of the Woodsboro murders, which are the murders from the original film. And, you know, the murders actually start happening. But I think it's a really cool environment being in like the movie set kind of place, which is awesome. I also love the fact that Courtney Cox comes back for like every single one of these movies. Like, I think that's so awesome and funny and iconic. And obviously I love David Arquette in these movies too. Oh, water bottle down. But I love the cast, and obviously like I get really attached to the cast after watching them for 4 movies straight. Moving on to number 12, I have Holiday. This is the one starring Emma Roberts. It's kind of like the holiday special, and it's basically a little rom-com movie where we follow Emma Roberts' character, and she basically like, you know, chance meets this one dude. Basically they just want someone to have as a date for all of the like holiday parties and events so that they can like avoid questions from like their family members and like their friends and things like that about, you know, instead of them taking pity on them, they can just be like, oh, like this is my date. And then of course they end up actually falling in love. But I really like the concept of this movie because it takes you literally through an entire year of holidays. So we start at Christmas and then we end at Christmas, which is so fun. We have like Christmas, we have New Year's, Easter, we have like the best friend's wedding, like, or like the brother's wedding, sister's wedding, I don't know. Lots of stuff. You go through Halloween, Thanksgiving, etc. So It's really fun. Moving on to number 11, we have The Holiday, not to be confused with Holidate. The Holiday is like the Christmas rom-com movie starring Cameron Diaz, Jude Law, Kate Winslet, and Jack Black, and this is a classic holiday movie, and I watched it for the first time this year, and it was really great. I mean, they switch houses for the summer, or for the winter, and they fall in love, and that's just awesome. It's just great. I mean, there's just so many things I could go on and say about this movie, but truly you should just go watch it yourself. And I mean, Jude Law is just perfection in this film, so big fan, huge. Moving on to number 10. We are at the top 10, guys. Finally, we've made it. I feel like I've been sitting here talking for far too long, but we finally made it to the top 10 of the movies that I've watched for the first time this year. And coming in at number 10 is She's All That. And this movie is just like every single like classic rom-com trope that you could possibly think of. It's like the inventor of the rom-com trope, which is, you know, why they make fun of it in that, what's it, Not Another Teen Romance, or the movie that Chris Evans is in. It's like the parody film, and it's essentially just She's All That, but just they make it really obvious. Like, just it's about, you know, this like artsy girl and this guy, this popular jock guy that is basically, you know, challenged to turn her into like the prom queen, which I think is like a cool like twist on the movie. I think it's like kind of fun making like him like the popular jock guy and like her kind of like the loser. But I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. All right, number 9. This is crazy. We're in the single digits now, guys. Number 9, Pretty Woman. I watched this movie last night, which is why I was so glad that I hadn't filmed this video until today, because I was like, well, now I can put Pretty Woman on my list, and this got the number 9 spot. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was great. I haven't seen Julia Roberts in a lot, but the stuff that I have seen her in before wasn't really my fave. And this one I really liked her. I thought the romance was so good. Like, I loved like the slow burn style of it. I loved just like all of it. I loved the concept of it, how she like made him a better person, and he like inspired her to like, you know, go for more in life. I don't know. It was great. I really liked the dynamic here. And also I wanted to point out the fact that they literally have like half of the Princess Diaries cast in this movie. I was like, all 3 of these people are in the Princess Diaries, and I'm not gonna tell you who, but just go watch Pretty Woman and be like, which of these people are in the Princess Diaries? Because there's 3 of them, which I thought was really funny that they just kind of like. Moving on to number 8, I have Flipped. And I watched this one, I think it was on HBO Max when I watched it, but it might be on Netflix now too. And this one's just so cute and adorable. Obviously we follow like these like, I think they're like middle schoolers. They can't be older than 8th graders. Like Bryce and Julie like falling in love, and she's like always had this huge crush on him, and he's like, you know, he's just being like a little middle school boy like with his feelings about it. And it's just a really cute movie to kind of watch them like get closer and become friends. It's adorable. And I love the like aesthetic of this film. It's like very like small suburban town style, which I'm a huge fan of. So I really enjoyed it. It was super cute, and I would highly recommend watching it. Over at number 7, we have Grease, the original Grease. I can't believe I hadn't seen this movie before. This movie was great. I really liked it. I mean, come on. The songs in this, fire. The story is fire. Like, just everything about this movie is fire. I loved it. John Travolta, like, it's just great. It's great. I listen to Summer Nights all the time. At number 6, we have Scream 2. This is the second Scream movie, and I loved it. I loved the college setting. There's literally a murder that happens in a sorority house, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I loved it. I don't know. I just was a big fan of the second one. I liked the college setting. Maybe it's because I'm in college, so I relate a little bit more personally to the college setting in this film. I love how they brought people back. I love that Randy was back in this movie. Randy is like so me. Like, I don't know, like the Scream movies are literally like thriller movies made for movie lovers, and I think that's like a fun little like concept that they've kind of run with the entire time, like throughout the entire franchise, honestly. So I thought Scream 2 was great. They did a fantastic job. The only thing that I didn't really like about Scream 2 is the killers. I don't think who ended up being the killers was all that surprising or good. But I mean, truly nothing will beat the first movie reveal, honestly. Like, the first movie reveal is just chef's kiss. It's the best. Moving on to number 5. Top 5 movies of the year, guys. Most of these are, I think 3 of these are 2023 releases. Starting with number 5, The Fall Guy. Now, this is a movie starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, and this is another movie that was made by movie lovers for movie lovers. I mean, he's the stunt double in this famous action show. You have Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie. It's, again, they're filming a movie within a movie. There's an entire scene in this movie where Ryan Gosling cries to All Too Well by Taylor Swift. This movie is fantastic. It was so good. It was super entertaining. It was action-packed. I loved it. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time I saw it in theaters. I was a really big fan, and so I just think it was really fun because, I mean, Ryan Gosling, he just like nails the comedy like almost every time, and so I love seeing him in like more comedic fun roles because I think he really takes it and runs with it. And so to have like essentially like 2 movies back to back be like pretty good Hollywood hits is crazy. I mean, he had Barbie in 2023 and then having Fall Guy this year I think was great, and so I'm always down to watch a Ryan Gosling film. Obviously, he's in my favorite movie of all time being La La Land, so I just really liked this movie. At number 4, we have The Amazing Spider-Man, and this is obviously the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie. I think this came out in 2013, I want to say. The second attempt at having the Spider-Man franchise. I really liked this movie. I mean, come on. Like, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone in this film, like, forever my Roman Empire. Just, it's, again, it just kind of feels like a fan service movie at this point, but I definitely think it was really good. And moving on to number 3, I have Hairspray. This is the 2007 movie adaptation of the Broadway musical Hairspray. Starring so many big names. I mean, you have James Marsden in this movie, you have Brittany Snow, you have Zac Efron, fresh off of the High School Musical set, in this film. The music for this movie is so fun, it's so hype. I love listening to just the soundtrack whenever. I think it's so good. Literally, John Travolta plays her mom in this movie, and that's the funniest thing I think anyone could have done. I love it though, like the song, I mean, like Without Love, Amanda Bynes, like it's great. I have nothing negative to say about Hairspray. It like kind of changed my life when I saw it. Moving on to number 2. Now, I will say, this particular movie was number 2 was number 1 until very recently. But that's because number 2 is Twisters, the 2024 release. Kind of based off of the original Twister movie. We made a sequel starring Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones alongside Anthony Ramos. This movie was the movie of the summer. Like, Glenn Powell is up right now. He is so up. I mean, after Top Gun Maverick happening, I think people, like, he finally started to be on people's radars, even though like he was in Hidden Figures and Set It Up, which is a great rom-com on Netflix. I think Twisters really did it. I mean, I have the soundtrack sitting right here. I loved it. Again, I go to school in Oklahoma, so I had a really big like personal connection to this movie. This movie was really, really good. I saw it twice in theaters, and I've seen it 1 time since, so I've already seen the movie 3 times since it came out earlier this year. And obviously I bought the soundtrack, and I love it. I mean, again, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma by Luke Combs. It was like the soundtrack to our football season this year at OU, so I hear it a lot. I hear that song a lot. And this brings us to number 1, the grand finale, my number 1 favorite movie that I have watched in this year. Came out on November 22nd, and yes, Wicked. It's Wicked. Guys, this movie was fantastic. I've seen it twice in theaters, and I'm down to go again. I mean, this movie, like, it's so good. I personally had never seen the Broadway musical, but I knew a lot about Wicked before going into it. I did a little bit more research, so I wouldn't be totally surprised when I saw the film, but just the execution was amazing. The marketing campaign for this movie was insane. Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo, Jonathan Bailey, like, they absolutely killed the game. It's funny, it's fresh, it's new, and it drives straight from the source material, which makes a lot of Broadway fans really, really, really happy. I mean, they did what Mean Girls couldn't do earlier in the year, and I think splitting this like saga into Wicked Part 1 and Wicked Part 2 was genius, so that they can fit both the Act 1 and the Act 2 scenes into the movie. And so I'm excited for us to get Act 2, because Act 2 gets a little bit more crazy. We get like the actual tie-ins from the original Wizard of Oz. I mean, Wicked is just one big like fan fiction that we've kind of universally adopted to be canon, even though it technically isn't. But it's just kind of the worldwide accepted version of like the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West, which is honestly so awesome and cool that we were able to do that. But this movie was fantastic. I loved it. I can't wait for the sequel to come out. I think it's great. I've been listening to Dancing Through Life on repeat. I love seeing Jonathan Bailey in more roles. Someone just announced a live action Tangled, and they want Jonathan Bailey to play Flynn Rider, and I think that's the only person I would be okay with playing Flynn Rider. As you guys can tell, I'm a huge Tangled fan, and so the fact that the live action version of Tangled is kind of like officially being announced, like, we gotta do it right, guys. We gotta do it right. But Wicked, favorite movie so far of the year. I mean, it was great. And with that, the 2024 movies wrapped video comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on all of the movies that I watched for the very first time this year. I'm super excited that I was able to knock all of these movies off my watch list, and then of course get to go to the theaters and see a bunch of new 2024 releases. I'm hyped to watch even more new movies in the new year, and I am making this video a little bit early. It's like about December 15th. And so we're only halfway through December, so there's obviously a couple chances I could watch a couple new movies that won't make it into this video, unfortunately, but I think we got the gist of everything that I was watching this year, which is awesome. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little fun video. Hope you're excited to hear more of my like movie thoughts every year, so I hopefully continue to do this. And stay tuned, because I think I'm gonna have my book reading wrap-up coming out very soon, later, closer to the end of the year for sure. But if you don't already, you should totally follow me on my main Instagram, and then I also have a journaling Instagram account where I kind of talk more about my movies and, you know, cinema and things like that. So you can follow me on both of those, as well as my TikTok, Goodreads, and letterboxd. They're all going to be listed in the description down below, so if you want to keep up with all my thoughts and feelings. But yeah, let me know your opinions and thoughts in the comments on some of your favorite movies that you've seen this year and what you would switch about my list. But yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the month. This is an early Happy New Year, and have the best holiday season ever. I'll see you guys next time.